Alrighty guys, what's going on? Another video here, Real Life Ed. My name's Ben. Welcome back. And today we're going to talk about my single biggest struggle. And there's a good chance it could be yours too, but I'll talk about this in the context of how I've experienced it in relation to improving my mental health and navigating the land of anxiety, the land of depression, the land of obsessive thoughts, the land of intrusive thoughts, and that wilderness where you feel utterly lost and you don't have any you cannot get your bearings and you cannot move forward. And so you feel distant from your life and you feel removed from your circumstances and you feel powerless to change things for the better. You feel unable to fix the problem and get through, this storm. So I want to just simplify things a little bit by zeroing down to one specific problem that I dealt with in this situation. And that is trying to solve the problem that you're in is actually the biggest problem from minute to minute, from day to day, and that turns into week to week, month to month, and then even years. We get stuck in these tracks where we are trying to solve the problem in the moment because we think that by solving it, we're going to kind of fix our condition. We're going to fix our anxiety. We're going to fix our mood. We're looking for that problem. We're striving to solve it. And we're led to believe that that's going to make everything better. So in my experience, that used to play out with compulsive solutions. So I used to compulsively say prayers to sort of purify myself from these intrusive thoughts, these thoughts that I didn't want to have. They'd be awful. They'd be about killing a family member, or they'd be about some explicit sexual image or act or circumstance that, it's the last thing you'd want to do, but these come into your head. And so it'd be these prayers, these compulsive sort of, oh, I don't want to do that. I would never do that. I'm sorry for thinking that. These kind of solving that problem in the minute. So that's kind of a specific example of what I've had that could manifest, right? And it feels like, you can solve it by doing those things. That's what you're trying to do. You're trying to solve that problem in the moment. The same thing happens with health anxiety. People seek validation for their symptoms. Has anyone else felt this? Did you have this? Did you have that? Did your head get shaky? Did you ever get weird tingling in your toes? People want to solve this when really solving the problem is the problem. You have to leave it there because that's not the level that you can't solve the problem at that level. You're playing into an illusion, and playing into the illusion is keeping you stuck. It's keeping you in that same spot. And tough thing is, this takes time and this takes training to realize this, to step out of that loop. And there's all kinds of books and amazing resources that have been done about this with, meditation and neuroplasticity. And what's crazy is that this is actually you can let yourself off the hook here. It's not like, this is not a reason to beat yourself up, but we're on these loops and our brains are running on these paths. It's actually a real biological thing. The neurons in our brains are used to firing this way. So it's like we immediately try to solve these problems in these ways that we're used to, even though we know they don't work. If you've that's why people with like OCD, they'll check something again and again. It's like, if you're checking it to then know that you've checked it so it's safe, then why do you need to do it again? So the very act of solving the problem that you're doing denies that you actually trust that it works. And a lot of people even realize this, and I used to realize this. I would know this is not, rational. This doesn't make sense. I know I'm solving the problem wrong, but I'm still going to do it. And the way that we need to navigate this is start to realize that we're solving these problems on the wrong levels. Even if we can't stop solving them on the wrong levels, even if we can't stop checking a thing or Googling our symptoms, or even trying to figure out a reason why we're feeling depressed, just knowing that, starting to get that awareness that, okay, I'm trying to solve this problem at the wrong level, and that's actually not the solution. So, I can let myself carry on this way, but I just know it's a bigger solution, and it's a really difficult thing to accept, because that is the number one struggle. It's going back to these solutions that you think work, even when you kind of know they don't, and in reality they don't work. So there are these trick solutions, and when we stop trying to solve these things, or when we even acknowledge that we are trying to solve them the wrong way, we can open up to a bit of a bigger picture, and that's where the real healing can happen. Acceptance is a huge thing kind of in the healing space. There's acceptance and commitment therapy. There's all kinds of, there's mindfulness, there's, allowing things to be there. There's a phrase called self as context, which means you are just the context for which things take place. There's exercises where you picture your thoughts on these leaves just floating down a little river, and you just practice detachment, diffusion. You diffuse from what's going on. It's a difficult thing to do, and it takes time, but it's well worth practicing, and you can do that with meditation and things like that. But these sort of things can lead you to find the healing on a bigger level. But it gets even more exciting than that, because this is not just about cognitive behavioral therapy or thinking exercises or even positive thinking, because the same thing happens in other areas. And when we start to get away from these little sort of these almost addictive solutions that we've come up with, we start to realize that we actually have no idea how healing works a lot of the time. But when we can open up to the space where that can happen in all these different areas, in diet, in meditation, in prayer, in exercise, in sun, some of those parts is greater than the whole, and we end up with a real solution that's much, much bigger, and it can grow exponentially. So you don't just, you might get micro improvements along the way, but when you have these real solutions, or when you're opening up to this kind of bigger solution, this bigger healing through all these different things you're doing, there's this exponential change in the healing. And so one day you might just feel totally, I've experienced this too, you might just feel totally better. You might just feel totally over it almost. You're like, holy shit, I'm out of that fog, and I can't even really explain why, but it just happens. It's like one day you just step out of it, and that really can happen. It's not like a woo-woo thing. And when that happens, you get this perspective shift, and you're like, oh my gosh, like I was in this. It's like I used to be, well, still I'm really bad at video games, and I'd be playing Mario Kart, and you keep driving up against the wall, and you're like, why am I driving up against the wall? And you get back on the track, and you're like, oh my gosh, like the whole time I just had my, had a bag over my head. That's what it felt like. And so getting these bigger solutions, it's just this total paradigm shift where you're like, oh my gosh, I was trying to solve this the wrong way. Like I kind of know I was in this I was in this trap. I was in a trap. But then you'll go back into it. You'll fall back into it. You'll start doing those things again. And that's the crazy thing about kind of mental illness and some of these kind of paradigm shifts, is that you can go in and out of them, and you can forget. I've done that. I've been kind of, whether it's being hungover a few times or something throws me off, and I think I go back to those old habits of solving these things in the wrong ways, and trying to find these solutions or find these root causes that are not really there. And it's interesting. And I'll just wrap this up with something that hopefully kind of brings it home, which is when I'm doing badly in a bunch of areas of life, or in any specific area, I tend to want to read books, watch videos, and listen to podcasts, and I get obsessive about learning about the topic to solve it, right? Kind of like that. It's almost like Googling the symptoms. It's almost the same thing. And it's almost like this compulsive consumption. But when I am doing better and I'm stepping more into those bigger modes of healing, and I know I'm actually walking it. I'm actually walking kind of in the healing, and I'm not just compulsively getting these little hits of sort of problem solving. That's kind of that fake problem solving we talked about. When I start doing that, I notice, oh my gosh, like I don't need to listen to podcasts. I don't want to. I don't need to look up this. I don't need to learn about this. I don't need to hear someone who talked about how they got through it. And it's not that it's a bad thing to listen to those things or to find those stories. It's amazing to do that. But what's really neat is when you start to do better, when you start to step out of those sort of broken mindsets, it melts away and you just get these totally different perspectives. So healing's not linear. It's not just like straight line. You can have these breakthroughs that totally change your kind of paradigm about your experience, your suffering. You can even become grateful if you're suffering. That might sound crazy if you've struggled a lot. And I know so many people have so much pain. But I've even had moments of that where I'm like, oh my gosh, like I'm grateful for what I went through. And what a crazy thing to think. But that's just what can happen when we open up on these different levels. It's the real healing. It's not the little compulsive, discouraged sort of scarcity mindset. Could I feel maybe a little bit better? Could I find a medication that could just make me feel normal? We stop just looking for good enough and we start to realize what we're really made for, who we really are, what it is to experience the fullness of all of that. And it's this breaking open of that whole thing, and it changes everything. And so I just want to, if you find yourself in these little traps, or you relate it all to these little solving these problems, these micro problems that it's almost this compulsive healing, it can be tough, but be patient with that. Don't beat yourself up. And just even know that there's more. Just know that there's more, and you'll get there. You'll figure it out. And this channel is all about talking about those things and giving you that path. Hopefully, it's going to be different for everyone. It's not a step by step, but there are things you can do to put yourself in a posture to welcome these transitions of real healing. So that's all. Hopefully that made sense or resonated even a little bit. And there's levels to this shit, as someone said. I don't know who said that, but there's levels to this shit. And having gone through some of these loops, I hope that just sharing them is of value, and maybe even validates some of the craziness that you're going through, because it gets crazy in there. We're all a little crazy in there, but there's more. There's doors and windows to walk through, and there's a lot of hope, and probably gets better than you can even imagine it gets. So don't give up, and please like or leave a comment. Leave a comment with what your fake, or not your fake, what your biggest issue is, what you get stuck on, or what your little what your compulsive healing activity is. That's okay. Like sometimes even just calling it out, you're like, oh, I'm doing this again, but like and that's okay, but we can get past that, and we can start to get off the hamster wheel, right? And walk forward. So yeah, please like and comment if you enjoyed this, if you found it valuable. Keep making videos, and we can all get better together. So my name's Ben. This is Real Life Ed, real life lessons that matter, that they don't teach you in school. So keep coming back, and I'll keep being here. Take care.